Spoke exclusively to the former ISIS bride, Shamima Begum, who told us that the government, quote, clearly don't know what they're doing, unquote, in their fight against terrorism here in the UK, and that she said she should be allowed to come home, face the British justice system, if necessary, go to jail, and she said she would cooperate with the intelligence services here and tell them everything she knows about ISIS and name names. So will the government listen to her pleas to come back here? The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, joins us now. I don't know how much, if any, of the interview you saw, Mr Javid, but that's a summary of it. Is there any prospect that the British government will change its mind and bring Shamima back here and put her in the dock?
I didn't see that interview, I'm afraid, but I did hear you just a moment ago about your penchant for throwing cabinet ministers off the air, so I better answer that question. Okay. Even though I'm the Health Secretary now, not the Home Secretary, yes. But nevertheless, look, I made the decision around Shamima Begum at the time. I can't get into the details of any individual case, but obviously when you make a decision of that type, you don't do it lightly, and it was based on the advice of my department, but also our intelligence agencies, and I'm clear that it was absolutely the right decision to protect the British people. I think actually, Richard and Susanna, if you were the Home Secretary and you were presented with the information that I had at the time, you would have made exactly the same decision, because your job as Home Secretary is to protect the British people. And as for coming back, that's gone up to our highest court in the land, Supreme Court. They made a judgment where they supported my decision unanimously, and I think it's pretty clear-cut.
But that was then. And here we are now. Do you think that basically people, it's kind of once a terrorist, always a terrorist? Or, I mean, is she basically forever going to be stateless? Do you think that that's what she deserves?
Well, as I say, you know, I can't get into the details of this particular or any other case that I've dealt with as Home Secretary, but I am clear that the decision is both morally right, absolutely right, but also is legally correct, and it is the right one to protect the British people, because that should be the concern of every minister, but certainly the Home Secretary is to protect the British people, and all decisions should be consistent with that.
Well, you certainly wouldn't be playing to the public gallery if you did allow her back into this country to face trial, because as I've been saying through the programme, we've had an overwhelming negative response to that interview. People hate her. They actually hate her. I think that's an accurate word to use.
That's a decision for people. For me, it's never about that kind of emotion. It's just about doing the right thing with the information that you're presented and just taking your job seriously.
But you don't think there's ever going to be room to reconsider what the person she is now, as opposed to the 15-year-old she was when she went out there?
That's not for me to say now. That's a decision for the current Home Secretary. But as I said, I think the decision was the right one, and I think the British people should be protected at all times to the best of the ability of ministers.
Can I just establish then that the reason that you maintain your position is because you believe that she is a security threat? Do we not have the security which would enable us to bring back a very high-profile individual and put her on trial? Because it feels as if the quality of our justice system should be able to test her claims.
Well, again, I don't want to talk about the detail of a particular individual, but I would say this, is that when someone leaves the UK, full of hate for the UK, and goes out somewhere in this Syria, let's say, to kill innocent people, that it's very hard to gather evidence. That I think people can understand why it would have been hard for the UK authorities to gather the evidence that might be necessary for a court. So you have to use the tools that you have in the box. I'm not pretending they are perfect in any way, but you have to use the tools that are available to you as a minister to protect the British people, and that's what matters. And you have to listen to the experts, especially our world-class intelligence agencies, the best in the world, with the information that they've got. And that's what I think any minister should do.
And I know that people watching will absolutely agree. And you say you won't talk about an individual case, but we have allowed hundreds of former ISIS fighters back to the UK, hundreds of them. And it seems, even though you say you won't talk about one specific case, it does seem as if we're using Shamima Begum as an embodiment of of our hatred of ISIS. But we have to acknowledge she is being treated as a special case.
That's not the case at all. There are a number of people, well over 100, and that's a public number of people that were stripped of their citizenship as a last resort to protect the UK. So she's not a particular case. She happens to be someone you're talking about now because you specifically had your team go out there and look for her, and that's fine. You can do that. But you could have also found others if you tried. So it would be wrong for you to suggest that it's a particular individual case.
Are 100 other people left stateless by being stripped of their citizenship?
Well, no one's left stateless because it will be against international law to leave anyone stateless. So there's not a single one of them are stateless.
Bangladesh does not claim Shamima Begum as one of its citizens.
Bangladesh can say what it's like. We follow the law in this country, including international law, and that's why, as I say, this decision itself was tested to the limit, to the highest court in the land, and they agreed with the decision that I made unanimously.
We saw some of the evidence that was passed across your desk that you saw because it was leaked to the newspapers, and there's no reason to think that what we read and what we read out during the interview wasn't the stuff that you read when you were making your decision. For example, allegations that she was seen by multiple witnesses stitching terrorists into their suicide vests in such a way that they couldn't ever get out of them until, or if they tried, they would detonate. There were specific witness statements which you saw. She totally denies that. She says it's completely made up. It's been made up in order to discredit her and to keep her out of the country. And she repeatedly denied ever doing any such thing. Are you fully confident that her denials on this programme this morning were false denials and that actually she did do the things that you read about in the evidence that you considered?
I'm not going to get into details of the case, but what I will say is that you certainly haven't seen what I saw.
So there was worse?
You haven't seen what I saw.
OK.
So you maintain there is a national security risk?
And let me say this. I think if you did know what I knew, as I say, because you are sensible, responsible people, you would have made exactly the same decision. Of that, I have no doubt. So
Shamima Begum remains in a refugee camp, a holding camp in Syria.
Indefinitely.
And that is her fate indefinitely.
The government continues to put the priority of the British people and to protect them as it's one of its number one issues. OK. Very quickly, got a plan A and a plan B. At all.
We've got a plan A and a plan B. Are you happy? Are you happy with it seems to be a sort of a compromise which, looking at the opinion polls this morning, most people are reasonably comfortable with. How do you feel about it?
Look, I think it's the responsible approach here. Right now, as we head into autumn and winter, we know that COVID sort of likes that condition. We know flu and other viruses like that part of the year. So I think it's right we set out how we're going to tackle the challenges that lie ahead. Our vaccines are our first line of defense. They're doing an amazing job. We've also got new treatments for COVID that we didn't have a year ago. We've got an amazing testing system. We've got a world-class surveillance system. So those are our major defences. And yesterday I also announced that with the vaccination programme, we're going to do even more around uptake, but especially the new booster programme, which will start next week for 30 million people over the age of 50. And also this week we started an offer for 12 to 15-year-olds. So I think taken together, we absolutely have the right plan. But what you just referred to as plan B is our contingency planning. Just in case. I think it's right for a government to think ahead. If things went the other way, unexpectedly, then I think we would want to react and respond quickly, and I just think that's the responsible thing to do.
What's your gut? This is a question I'd ask you if I bumped into you at a party or something. What's your gut? Do you think this time next year this will all be behind us and we'll be back to normal?
I'd love to bump into you in a party. That's the first thing. So please do invite me if you get the opportunity. But I think that will it all be behind us next year? No. I mean, COVID is with us for years. It's probably with us forever. We're going to have to learn to live with COVID in the same way we've had to learn with other viruses like flu. I'm not suggesting it's like flu at all, but in the way that we learn to live with viruses. And I think that vaccinations are with us for a long time, not necessarily for everyone, but I don't think we should pretend that COVID will just disappear one day, but we will learn to live with it and look how much we've returned back to normal.
We're in danger of painting a rosy picture, which I just think is out of kilter with the facts. We have 1,000 hospitalisations a day. Deaths are going up. Infections are 10 times what they were this time last year. And where's your threshold for Plan B? This isn't going away. It's getting, for many people, this is getting worse. Yeah,
the difference between now and this time last year, I mean, there's a lot of differences, but the biggest one is the vaccination programme. We didn't have vaccines at all this time last year.
Unfortunately, infections are going up.
Well, hospitalisations are up, but they are mercifully low compared to what we've seen in the past. Death rates are even lower. And let me just to share with your viewers, I thought this was startling when we learnt this just a couple of days ago. The ONS reported that if you look at all the deaths from COVID in the UK in the first 6 months of this year, that 99% of those people that sadly died from COVID were unvaccinated. So that's the power of vaccines, and that's why we need to get more people to take up vaccine. If there's anyone watching this right now that hasn't had a vaccine that is eligible, please do take it. You're not only protecting yourself, but you're protecting those around you. The vaccines are working, and that's the difference.
Minister, you have answered the questions, but nevertheless, interview terminated. Because we're out, only because we're out of time.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.